In a civilized and cultivated country, wild animals only continue to exist at all when preserved by sportsmen. The excellent people who protest against all hunting and consider sportsmen as enemies of wildlife are ignorant of the fact that in reality, the genuine sportsman is by all odds the most important factor in keeping the larger and more valuable wild game species from total extermination. Theodore Roosevelt. I've always opened with a quote. It sets the tone for the audience, and who I choose the quote from gives you a better idea of who I consider myself to be. My name is Kevin McDaniel. I'm a hunter, fisherman, and avid outdoorsman, above all, a sportsman. I consider myself to be a wildlife advocate, a conservationist, and a preserver of all these wild places that we get to go out and enjoy. I didn't primarily grow up hunting. It was something that was embedded later on in my life. But I did grow up in the woods, developing an appreciation and respect for these wild places and wild creatures that I now pursue. I'm a firm believer that the role of man is to conserve these areas and pass down for generations these wild places and these wild animals for everyone to enjoy. Hunting is that conservation. Through financial contribution, time that's invested, the time that's required, and the control of these populations, we can theorize that these animals will be, and these animals in wild places will be around and give opportunity for our kids and our grandkids for years and years to come. They'll get the same experience that we were given by our forefathers. First of all, everything costs money. Idaho Department of Fish and Game last year estimates $28.5 million in wildlife spending. Conservation costs money. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation economy reports claims that cumulatively as hunters, more than $8 million daily was donated to conservation. The Backcountry Hunters and Anglers memberships alone generated nearly $5 million last year. So who picks up the slack for this if it isn't hunters? Surely you're not going to pay for it. It's not going to be added to our taxes. Since 1984, through negotiations, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has secured and protected more than 11,000 square miles of land. That's for elk and other habitat to thrive on. Money's useless without the manpower to put it to use. If you don't have people that are willing to go out and put this money to use, it just sits there. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation alone provided more than 11,000 volunteers last year, which cumulatively, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation recorded 10,000 plus projects, improving more than 7.3 million acres for elk and other wildlife to thrive on. Hunting and fishing provide impossible information on these creatures that we all pursue. In a study recently done by Cambridge University, controlled hunting actually improved habitat and population in a given area, as opposed to non-hunting areas. This information helps to provide guidelines for the local wildlife. All that information is gathered together and cumulatively develops what we would call the rule book or the regulations. The regulations are set in stone at the beginning of each year and regulate not only the quantity of species, but the quality of species that you are able to harvest. These are developed by biologists and ecologists in the local areas, not grand scheme. A recent study done in Iowa by the DNR, it was called the Quality Deer Management Study, concluded that when hunters were willing, consuming more of a lesser population of deer and a lesser quality of deer actually improved the overall deer population that next year. Of course, we have to talk about predator control. Wolves in particular. A recent presentation given by Rady Newberg showed that when wolves control was put in the local hands of hunters, wolves actually thrived more so than when they were on the Endangered Species Act. These wolves have taken off, and hunters have been the ones responsible for that improvement. It's predation control, it's not hate. This conservation has been done by hunters for more than 140 years. Nothing's changed. Wild things and places that these days are taken for granted. They're viewed as this infinite source that's always going to exist. And in reality, they're not. They're finite. They're very finite. I challenge you to ask yourselves, if not hunters, who pays these bills? Who fills these roles? Who gives the time? Who gathers research? Who dedicates